Socrates predicted the future, and it's terrifyingly accurate. What if a man who lived over 2,400 years ago predicted many of the exact struggles we face in the modern world? Not through science fiction, not through divine prophecy, but through relentless questioning, sharp logic, and deep insight into human nature. His name was Socrates, a man with no books, no wealth, no political power, just questions. We peel back the layers of time and uncover the chilling ways Socrates foresaw the world we live in now, and why his insights are more urgent than ever. To understand how he could see our future, we have to understand his world. Socrates lived in Athens during its golden age, around 469 to 399 BCE. This was a time of artistic brilliance, military conquest, and democratic experimentation. But it was also a society filled with pride, inequality, and a fear of dissent. Socrates didn't write anything himself. What we know of him comes from his students, especially Plato. And according to Plato, Socrates spent his days wandering the city, asking questions that made people uncomfortable, questions that exposed the contradictions in their thinking, the flaws in their reasoning, and the fragility of their values. He called himself a gadfly, someone who bites the lazy horse of society to keep it awake. And Athens didn't like being bitten. In 399 BCE, Socrates was put on trial for corrupting the youth and impiety. His defense was that he was guided by a divine inner voice, and that it was his moral duty to question everything. They sentenced him to death. But before he drank the hemlock, he left behind a set of philosophical warnings, ones that, if you look closely, seem to eerily reflect the state of our own world. Let's start with one of Socrates' deepest concerns, the collapse of truth. Socrates believed that without truth, society falls into chaos. But he didn't mean truth as in facts you can Google. He meant something deeper, the moral and intellectual integrity of a society. In dialogues like the Gorgias, Socrates warns that when people care more about persuasion than truth, democracy becomes dangerous. Today we live in a world where opinions are often louder than evidence. Social media platforms reward outrage and emotion, not wisdom. Influencers, not experts, shape public opinion. Echo chambers replace conversation. Socrates saw this coming. He warned about the rise of rhetoric, the art of persuasion, without concern for truth. He saw how skilled speakers could manipulate the public, appealing to emotions and desires instead of reason. He even predicted that this would erode democracy itself, because if the people are easily manipulated, then democracy becomes just another form of mob rule. The unexamined life is not worth living. It sounds poetic, but it's also practical. An unexamined life, one where we don't question our beliefs, our biases, our leaders, is vulnerable to lies. This isn't just philosophy. This is a warning. Socrates foresaw the crisis of misinformation. He didn't need the internet to know how dangerous unchecked persuasion could be, and his solution? Question everything, especially your own assumptions. Socrates wasn't just worried about lies. He was deeply troubled by how we think. In his dialogues, he often showed that people didn't really know what they were talking about, even those in power. Politicians, poets, craftsmen, they all thought they were wise. But Socrates had one advantage. He knew nothing. This is known as Socratic irony, pretending ignorance to reveal deeper ignorance in others. It's not cruelty, it's a mirror. Now think about today. We live in a world obsessed with hot takes, fast answers, and surface-level understanding. We Google instead of reflect. We scroll instead of contemplate. We confuse data for wisdom. Socrates would have been horrified. He believed that real knowledge comes from dialogue, from slow thinking, from humility. Without that, we become arrogant and blind. I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. It's not just a cute line, it's a philosophy of intellectual humility, a mindset of curiosity. In a world overwhelmed by information, Socrates predicted the danger of shallow minds. And that's terrifying. Because shallow minds are easy to manipulate, they don't think critically, they follow trends. They become tools for those in power. So what do? We learn to slow down. We learn to ask better questions. We choose depth over speed. Here's the most controversial prediction Socrates ever made. He didn't believe in democracy, at least not the way we practice it. In Plato's Republic, Socrates compares democracy to a ship where the crew votes on who should captain, even if they know nothing about sailing. He argues that without education, without wisdom, giving everyone equal political power is dangerous, because the masses can be easily swayed. Demagogues rise, tyranny follows. He believed that democracy without philosophy is unstable. He wasn't advocating for dictatorship. He was advocating for rule by the wise. Philosopher kings who seek truth above popularity. Now, in the modern world, this sounds elitist, but Socrates' real concern was education. If the public isn't taught how to think critically, democracy becomes theatre. Votes become emotional. Leaders become celebrities. He saw Athens fall into this trap. After his death, the city would lose its democracy. His execution was a warning. When a society kills its questioners, it kills its future. So what would Socrates say about our political systems today? Are your leaders seeking truth or power? Are your votes based on reflection or emotion? Are your conversations thoughtful or performative? His vision of democracy wasn't terrifying because he hated it. It was terrifying because he loved it and saw how fragile it really was. Socrates died alone, surrounded by a few students drinking poison. He could have escaped. His followers offered to help, but he refused. He believed in the law, even when it was unjust. He believed in truth, even when it cost him everything. And in that moment, he left behind more than a philosophy. He left behind a challenge. Will we examine our lives, or will we drift into illusion? Socrates wasn't a prophet. He didn't claim to predict the future. But through his questions, he exposed timeless patterns in human behavior, the danger of valuing comfort over truth, the seduction of persuasion over wisdom, the slow erosion of critical thought. These are not just ancient concerns. They are the beating heart of our modern crisis. And yet there's hope, because his method lives on. Every time we ask a hard question, every time we challenge a lazy assumption, every time we admit we don't know, we keep Socrates alive. If Socrates was so wrong, why is everything he warned about happening right now?